Actually, I'm not afraid of snakes.
Well, you sure seemed like you were afraid.
No, it's just that when you're working on a job site and a snake comes slithering up from the field to the job site where you're working, you don't think he's doing it because he wants to be held.
Well, that's exactly what he wanted.
I know, and that's the crazy part. It's like, well, he was our first customer.
Well, it wasn't like I didn't want a store. Like, I really did want a store, but it didn't seem to make much sense, like doing one out on the property so far from town.
Right. I get that. And I got that. But I knew that it wasn't going to be like a regular store. I knew that it was going to be more like a showroom or like a gallery too, like something that you could make an appointment and come and check things out. But we could also sort of pivot, like, because we're going to have events. So when we have events, it'd be open.
Yeah. Well, I trusted your intuition. You had a store in New York City.
So I did have a store in New York, and that was like in the 90s, the early 90s. It was pretty fun. I had a girlfriend at the time who was making all kinds of cool clothes, and like she was making like patent leather skirts. It was like when the D-Light thing was going on. And
What's D-Light?
You know, like the groove is in you, huh? That thing.
Yeah.
And so she was making these funky little things, and she would just put them on a clothing rack and take them to Washington Square and sell them in a couple hours, like 10, 20 pieces. So I was like, we should have a store. But it's, that's a tricky thing. We had an apartment over there on Bleecker Street, but we had to find a place that was a work-live, which is a tricky combo to get. So we did end up finding a place on 10th Street next to 2nd Avenue Deli. And I think we were allowed to do the work-live, but it wasn't set up. So I had to put in a bath, a shower and a wall, and I had to build a loft bed and all this stuff. But it was pretty cool, and it was pretty funky. And there's a funny story to it, because I was working at the time for a moving company that did a lot of decorator work and did a lot of, art moving and stuff like that. And they had a huge building, Upper West Side, and they had a dead storage lot that had been there for like, I don't know how long.
What's a dead storage lot?
It means somebody quit paying on the storage. They put stuff in there years and years ago. They had a few dead lots. So they're clearing them out and they're throwing most everything away. And this one lot, we get halfway through and it's got a couple pallets, boxes, tons and tons of boxes. I look at them. They're go-go boots. They're patent leather Sears
cool.
Roebuck. Sears Roebuck go-go boots.
So that's like original.
Original. It was a crazy find. I said to the guy who worked, it was all Irish guys who owned it and worked there. And I was like, I want to take these go-go boots. He said, what do you want go-go boots for, Dina? I said, I'm going to sell them. Where are you going to sell go-go boots? And I said, I got a store, okay? What are you doing working here? I said, listen, can I have the go-go boots? He gave me the go-go boots. I took them down. The real clincher was that they were they were big. Oh. They were big sizes. They were like women's 12, women's 13. They were all huge. You know who likes those?
Who likes some giant?
Well, drag queens found out about it and went wild. It took a couple of weeks. And
that's perfect.
And all of a sudden, like, drag queens were coming in looking for these go-go boots. And it got to be where every time I came home from work, there were just drag queens in the store hanging out and wanting to buy go-go boots. So they talked us into having a big opening party. It was a fun time. So my store blew up then.
It sounds like a blast.
But, you were a manager of a jewelry store. You know stores.
Yeah, my first job out of college was a jewelry store manager. Mm-hmm. I did that, and I did wax carvings for this jeweler. He was a custom jeweler in town.
Right.
So I had a lot of time in that.
Well, and so we both knew a little bit about what we wanted for sure with a store,
and what we didn't want.
And so really it was just we decided on the location, and the location out here, we picked the spot that was right behind the crow's nest, wedged up between a woodshed that we have. And you liked the woodshed being right there.
I still have dreams of converting the woodshed to my casting room,
Right.
and putting all the equipment in there. So I just thought it makes perfect sense to put the store on the other side of it, because then you can always see how things are made.
Yeah,
when you're right there in a studio.
Yeah. So we did. We started. Well, we got to make the floor, and I started decking out that area, and it's not square. And
No, it's not even a shape that we know.
I don't even know what it is. It's like one side is 16 feet long, and then I basically just put wood everywhere that it would take wooden deck. And I figured I will figure out what my store is going to look like afterwards. In fact, I even left these 2 trees. There were these 2 hackberry trees. I was like, I'll just build the deck around them.
Well, they made perfect little sentinels on the front door area.
Yeah,
so
they did.
Cool.
And then, we took a couple months and we sort of looked around because we wanted to really get some good, windows and doors and just cool things. We weren't going to just take any old thing.
No, we did find my favorite door, the little hobbit door.
Yeah, we did. We found we found that, and we found some round windows, and then we started building it.
Those walls were kind of challenging because we wanted one side of it to be pretty tall. Like,
we
it's
wanted
taller
it pretty
than
high.
any than ones we've made before.
Yeah. And so it was probably about 11 feet tall, and we'd been doing it where, I sheeted the sides of it too. So when it came time to hoist it, I was like, whoa, dude, this is, it was pretty heavy. But we started
probably something we should have done with another person.
Yeah, I think so. But we started getting the walls up, and we had some French doors for one side, and we decided we were going to do 3 doors in this. You know?
Well, that little hobbit door is what I call it, because it's a little round door, and I wanted to put it where I could have my own little secret entrance.
Right, like behind the counter, just like the employee entrance, right? So the main entrance was on one side, and we'd found these really cool, they almost looked like a church, like confessional windows. They were very slender, and so I wanted to sort of build like a proper little entrance.
It's almost like a little mini foyer or something. Yeah.
It looked more like a Catholic confessional with those windows.
Yeah,
it's like you enter and you confess your sins, and then you come on in. But on the other side, you didn't agree with me at first. I was like, well, I'm going to make a little porch out here and cover half of it, and I wanted to I wanted a roof over it, because I knew that we'd have spillover of just people, but also, and we've already seen now, we've started to put, different products out there when we have events, because we filled up the store. As all this was going on, we're getting the inside all shaped up. We're building. And I walked out on the porch one day, and I saw a rat snake, this gigantic 6-foot snake, slither out of the field, and he's just coming towards me at the store. And I just sat there, and he just came all the way up, and I called you, and you came out, and you picked him up.
Well, yeah.
I've never seen anything. It was almost like he was a pet. He was a domesticated snake. I couldn't believe it. And it went on. It went on for like 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, he was pretty cool. It was like rat snake, or some people call them chicken snakes. But they're really beneficial snakes to have. They do a better job at eating rats than cats do.
I completely agree. But I'm just saying, it was so bizarre that this snake seemed like he knew you. He was crawling all over you, and at one point, you curled him up and put him on your head like a hat.
He was very friendly.
I couldn't believe it. And then you just, after a little while, you just put him down, and he just went away.
Yep.
He just went back to wherever he was from. Mm-hmm.
One of the habitat.
It was a very biblical. It's like.
Are you calling me Eve?
I don't know. I'm just saying. It just seemed so weird. It was just crazy. Once we'd sided it out inside, we got outside, and you had this really great idea to use. We'd been using a lot of pallets, of pallet wood stuff. I'd gotten like 60 or 70 pallets at the end of this one show I worked on. And so we'd been cutting them up and we were going to use them for shingles.
I was super excited about doing this. It was very time consuming. I know now why people don't typically use pallet wood for things, because they're nailed together. It's hard to get them apart.
Yeah.
Once you get them apart, sometimes they break, sometimes they don't. But they really do make the perfect shingle because they're the right thickness. Mm-hmm. They're weathered, so they're not going to shrink or do anything weird.
Well, and it has such a great look. It's a very vintage. It reminds me of a sort of a Victorian era tea shop. But also, I like that they're small.
Yeah.
It's almost like dragon scale on the side of the,
I love that.
It's not a big shingle. It's really little, I mean, it's tough wood. They've held up really great. Mm-hmm. It was a great idea. I thought it worked out really cool. And then we started building the furniture inside as well. You started building the jewelry display.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about the cabinet and jewelry display because I had been gifted another thing, a vintage multi-drawered.
Right.
I think it was like an end table or something.
It was kind of like an end table that had these cool drawers in it. Yeah. And we just stripped the other stuff away.
I took the bottoms off of it, and I thought this would be the perfect base for the display cabinet. Yeah. And then I would build the display cabinet out of plexiglass on top of that. Mm-hmm. And
it came out so great the way you did that plexi.
Yeah, well, I taught myself a new technique about how to glass out the edge of plexiglass, because when you cut it and then you round it over, it's really foggy. And you need to make it clear again, like glass, you have I used a torch and basically like perfectly melted it, and it's called like glassing out.
It's called torching.
Torch the plexi. Yeah. Well, you couldn't burn it. You could burn it. So that was the hard
awesome.
part. Yeah.
And I put the top on the end of it, and I did a little notch curve, like, just give a little sexy curve on it. And we put a table on the other side, and we used a little piece of cedar post.
Yeah.
So it looked like a tree. I wanted it to look like a tree. Luckily, we had a bunch of other furniture. We had some cool wooden chairs. I got this one chest. It's like a secretary desk. It has a thing that flips down, and it had a broken leg, and they were throwing it out on a show. And it's got this cool brass inlay stuff. So that
the detail
became
work.
like a focal point. I knew I was going to make a display out of it. I took a headboard from a bed frame and just sort of carved it and worked that all together. Did another piece above the table.
Yeah.
A little hutch so we could put things in it. And of course we had, we'd gotten real comfy making these sort of notch outs, I call them, where we don't.
I think it utilizes the space better when you go back and you don't cover over the space in between each stud.
Yeah. Well, we use it for bookshelves and stuff, and we knew that we were going to use it behind the jewelry case. Yeah, and it turns out we're in the store now, so it's kind of weird to be talking about it. But after we got it built out, we knew it was time to start stocking it.
And this was fun time.
Yeah, this was the super fun part, because probably for 5 years already, we had been keeping bees out here.
Yeah, we've been beekeepers.
Yeah. We got about a dozen hives.
And we've been doing it very ethically, I think. Like, we don't make, to be commercial and to have honey to sell at a commercial level, you'd have to, it would be horrible.
Well, you'd have to take all their honey. I think we realized real quick, when we first got them, I was like, yeah, we're going to be in the honey business. And it's like, in order to be in the honey business, you basically have to take all their honey, and then they got to eat sugar water all winter.
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
One, that makes your honey not taste so great.
Right.
And two, it's just not very good beekeeping.
Right. Well, and that's the secret. Get a bunch of hives so you can just take a little bit from all of them. Mm-hmm. And we still do a pretty good honey haul twice a year. But from that, you were also making, with the beeswax, we were making beeswax bombs with the essential oils and stuff.
And you had actually started doing that.
I had started doing that. And then you quickly took it over because, I was doing it with beeswax and shea butter and using some essential oils. But that was your realm, the essential oils. You started thinking of all these combinations and flavors. And so you've really taken it over as far as, making tons of them and candles as well.
Yeah. I usually don't have a huge batch of candles because you get the wax when when a hive is either failed or absconded.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not like I don't want to take a bunch of their wax that they're using. It's
Right, because
literally
then
their home.
resetting a hive. Then they got to make it all back, and you don't want to.
So that does happen. If you're a beekeeper, you do end up having wax. And so, yeah, we make some skull candles and some taper candles, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah. This property has a lot of pecans on it, a lot of pecan trees.
Yes.
And I mean, all our neighbors are pecan farmers or nursery. And, we're like maybe a half a mile from the Colorado River. So this area for the last 80 years is huge.
Maybe even longer.
Yeah. And even when got the house, it came with...
Yeah, there were these vintage pecan picker-uppers. It looks like a spring attached to a metal handle. I mean, okay, so our property does, like you said, has a lot of pecans. And around the house, we have grafted pecan trees. And they produce pretty big, nice, fat, juicy pecans. But we also, on the property, we are boasting some of the oldest native pecans.
Right.
And they're huge. But the pecans are tiny.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I didn't used to think, I'm from New York. I grew up in New York State. There's something up, like they don't send the good pecans up there. By the time we got pecans, it was like they're dusty.
I think you said it. It's by the time. Like, I think y'all get like the last year's
I
crop.
never regarded pecans as like a big deal. And down here, I mean, our pecans, when you get pecans
fresh out of the nut,
right out of the, I mean, they're juicy and wet and like it's unbelievable. It's night and day. Like our pecans are just killer.
They're delicious.
Yeah, and you figured out a really good. We do raw pecans. We'll shuck them and bag them up.
We know.
Well, as a group, as a collective. I mean, I support you in your shucking and cracking of the pecan. I'm just not a pecan guy.
No, I tried to see if you could like maybe help me pick them up, but you couldn't even see them. And I was like, it's like Easter egg hunting. You look for the pattern.
This is why people in the frontier, you knew that's why they had like a dozen kids, because nobody wants to do that. You got no time to be picking pecans up.
It's time consuming.
Oh, it's so time consuming.
Between the picking up and then the shelling.
The shelling of pecans.
Yeah.
It's like if I was shelling pecans, I would charge $50 a pound for it because it's just too much work.
It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
But they're worth it.
It's totally worth it. And you started making candy pecans a few years ago. And
those are the best.
We can't even, they don't even make them to the store because, not because I eat 20% of them, but because when you make them, if you make 50 bags, you just post it online and they're gone. Everybody's like, I'll take 2, I'll take 5. Everybody buys them before we can even get them in the store.
Well, I like to use some of the best ingredients. I don't skimp on that. I use like brown sugar, raw sugar, pink Himalayan salt, really good eggs.
Yeah.
We use the egg whites, cinnamon.
And you put like a little Mexican vanilla in there too.
I put a little more than a little. Yeah.
They're so good. They're like the best candy pecan. And you've started doing you're making some varieties now.
Yeah. One other, it's like a orange savory, spicy pecan. And that's, some people don't like that. Well, I've gotten complaints that people will sit down and eat the whole bag candied.
Oh, I send them to my dad up in New York, and he'd be like, yeah, we love them. They make it about 15 minutes, a whole bag, about 15 minutes. So just eat the whole bag in one sitting.
I decided to make a flavor that wasn't quite so sweet, so you wouldn't feel so guilty when you ate all of them.
Slow them down. Yeah. It didn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, but it's I think a winner of a flavor.
Yeah. Oh, the pecans are always a hit. Always a hit. So we've got a little section in the store for the pecans, and so it was a no-brainer then that our orchard. We'd had an orchard for a few years. Our orchard was just producing a lot of fruit. We were surprised, really, because within even a couple years,
we had fruit.
It was putting out lots of fruit. Well, we've got 3 peach trees,
3 apricot trees,
2 plums, and 2 pears.
Yeah,
yeah.
And we had some apples.
Yeah, the apples didn't fare as well. I'm a big apple guy, and guys would tell me. This one guy worked and said, "Yeah, apples don't grow. They don't grow good down here." And I was like, "Well, I'm about to prove you wrong." And I had 4 apple trees. 2 of them, I think the heat gets them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they were fruiting for a little while, and then 2 of them left.
Left.
Still
Like
got
they
2.
pulled up roots and walked off.
They went back. They went back to Washington State. But it is a cute little orchard, and
Well-
you started making jams.
Yeah.
And from like everything.
Well, we were pretty much everything. And we were also using the fruit for your kombucha.
We were using it in the kombucha and in the hard kombucha. And the plums, I think the plums have really emerged as everybody loves them. I love them for the hard kombucha, and you make this plum butter that's
it's so
crazy.
And I've discovered that if something takes a long time to do, odds are it's going to be really good.
Oh, yeah.
And people are going to like it. Because the plum butter, I bake them with brown sugar for like maybe an hour.
Right.
And that just really sets in, and then the juices get
Yeah.
really
And then you stick it in a crock pot for like a day.
Yes.
I just know
Then
when
they
you're
get-
doing that because the whole house smells delicious.
The other preserves that we have, I do peach preserves.
You do a peach.
and
It's delicious.
Blackberry. Well, actually, we call it dewberry.
They're wild
Yeah.
blackberries.
And those are the only thing that I'm trying to get them to grow. And they do grow wild on the property, but they really do grow wild like on fence lines.
right.
Fig preserves, which is really good. You like the fig preserves.
Love the figs. They're not in the orchard, but they're just all around the house,
The figs, I try and do a different recipe for diabetics. It's not so sugar heavy. It's made with agave nectar.
Figs for diabetics.
Well, I mean, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, well, I would love that, but I can't have the sugar. And so it's nice to have an option.
Right. Well, all of the jams are out there in the store. The property, we made it a wildlife habitat about 5 years ago.
I think even longer now.
Yeah, actually, that's right. It's probably like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And it's just shocking what happens to the property. It used to get mowed, and in just 7 or 8 years, there's 15 feet of growth.
Yeah,
There's
mesquite trees are
everywhere.
crazy.
You get all kinds of indigenous stuff that just pops up, and you, of course, you started making tinctures.
Yeah.
With a lot of the things that came up.
Well, I have this philosophy that you have kind of a relationship with the plants that grow on your property as a cultivator and like a person that takes care of the property itself. Then
Right.
new things start growing, and then they all have a medicinal use. So why not make tinctures out of what you have?
I think the first tincture you did was a green husk black walnut, which is a mouthful to say.
Green husk black walnut.
And it's hard to
Yes.
picture it, but what it is there's black walnut trees here on the property. And the walnuts have a green, when they're not ripe, they have a green hard husk on the
Yeah.
outside. And that, you read that was like frontier medicine or
Oh
something.
yeah, I mean it's well known that is an anti-parasitic. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, they would use it for animals and humans to cleanse their system of
Right.
parasites or anything like that. Also
Yeah.
bacteria, so it's good for candida and things like that.
Which I just thought that was cool, that we had those here and you started doing that. And then as we started getting lots of Cherokee rose bushes that were popping up now that we weren't mowing, and turns out
Well, farmers think they're a pest, and they shouldn't grow because they become these gigantic mounds of gorgeous white roses.
yeah, but you know who likes it? A lot of birds, and I've even seen deer sneaking in and out of them on the property.
All the critters do
Yeah.
because there's like skunks that live in there. There's all kinds of animals. But the history behind the Cherokee rosebush, the reason why it's called Cherokee rosebush is that the theory or the folklore tale is that when the Cherokee were being not bust, but they were
Relocated?
relocated. That's the word.
They didn't get a bus. It was the
no,
Trail of Tears.
It was the Trail of Tears, and they were being relocated to a new area of land that they could have.
Yeah.
The tears from the women as they walked this Trail of Tears.
Became Cherokee rose bushes.
Yes, everywhere a tear dropped, would a Cherokee rose bush would sprout. Yeah, but
So there's a lot of pain behind this. There's a lot of pain and misery.
well, it kind of ties in with the purpose of the Cherokee rose. Like I make a tincture out of it,
Right.
an alcohol tincture, and that is working with the flower essence. And roses are particularly good with grief and heartache and
all this time you thought you were giving somebody some roses. It was like, no, it's for grief and heartache.
well, no, they
This
give
is
you
for
hope.
the grief and heartache that I've perpetuated on.
They're supposed to uplift you.
Oh,
They don't give you grief.
No, that's what I mean.
Relieving you.
It's
of
relieving
grief.
you of the grief of marriage. That's why you give them the roses. Like, here, I understand you're grieving because you're married to me. Let this be a small compensation for your grief and misery.
Well, it's a new way to look at a bouquet of roses, but I kind of like it.
And we've got chili pequins in that little cubby hole too.
Yeah.
Chili pequins are great because they're just like super hot. I had never encountered a chili pequin.
Well, it's really hard to actually purposefully cultivate chili pequins. They're like something you find wild. Like,
Well, it's funny is we found them along the fence lines, and then as you would collect them and you would sort them on the back porch, and over a couple of years, I guess you're just shushing the things off. Now there's chili pequin bushes on the side of the house,
Yeah.
which is cool.
well, and usually it's birds that propagate the chili pequin bushes.
Oh, they eat them and then
Yeah.
I see. They pass through the bird.
But I think also it happens just the way you said. Anything that is moving the pequin around is going to.
Yeah. Well, now we got them, and I like them. We put them in a little black pepper cracker, and you
Grind it.
grind a little pequin on your stuff, and they're powerful, man.
They
If anybody
are.
likes heat, it's a hot little thing,
Yeah.
and it's tiny too.
Great flavor, though.
Yeah. So all this stuff was going on. All this stuff is going on out here. All these farm products and all these cool things. But really, at the end of the day, the reason I wanted to have a store out here is because you make incredible jewelry. You're making rings and earrings and amulets and just all kinds of cool stuff. And you like carve things from wax.
Well, I mean, I did go to school for it. I got a degree in metal art and jewelry. And my first job here in Austin, right out of college, was carving waxes and managing a jewelry store.
Right.
And
But I don't think a lot of people do that anymore.
no,
Carve out of wax.
It's what do they call it? A lost craft,
Yeah.
almost, because now they have CNC machines
Right.
that will literally build the model
Right.
out of wax, and then it gets cast.
Right. But then it's perfect. Then every side is perfect. It's like when I first met you and started dating you for Christmas, you asked me what I want. You were going to make me a piece of jewelry. I was like, wow. And I said, make me a clotter ring. And you made me this clotter ring. I said, make it a macho clotter ring. And dude, you carved this ring out of
A piece of wax.
a piece of wax.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow. And there's just something cooler about it because like it's not machined. One side is a little different, it just looks organic,
Well, when I was doing, I did a lot of engagement rings at this jewelry store and custom ones, obviously. And when you have a stone and you're working from a stone, it's not perfectly cut because
Right.
they cut the stones to make the most out of the size and the color and the shape of it. So it's not perfect.
Right.
And so if you take that stone and put it in a perfect mounting, it doesn't quite look right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about, I guess the term nowadays is bespoke. There's something really charming about a piece of jewelry that's custom made that is made by hand. You can tell it's not.
I get that. No,
it is original.
it
and
looks different.
Yeah.
It looks, you detect it. You can just see it, when you look at it.
To me, it's more valuable.
Well, in you, and that's just the beginning of it because you do this, you make a lot of amulets, which are just, they're big. You've done some owls and some snakes, and you do these pieces that like somebody finds a stone or something that they like, and you build like an animal around it. And
Yeah.
the cool thing is they're always two-sided, so they can always play them the other way if they want to wear them the other way. And I just think that's just awesome,
I really like doing the animal amulets. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very personal thing, I think, for people. They
Yeah.
like picking out their own stone, and everybody's got a story. Oh, I had this whatever encounter with a bird or whatnot, and it means something to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and the stone stuff is always your thing too. I always think, well, even the display cases behind us,
Yeah.
but you can come in here and you can pull drawers out, and you're big on that, on people like checking out, stones or minerals or rocks and something that speaks to them, and then you make a piece from it. And again, early on when I met you, you do a lot of, you were doing film work, but you were still doing tons of
Museum work.
museum
too.
work and mineral mounts.
Yeah.
You were one of the first things we did together. I went up and worked with you at the Dallas Museum.
Nature and science. Yeah.
Yeah, you were doing all these mineral mounts, and I came up and photographed it and videoed it for them, and it was awesome. Making mineral mounts is another thing that I feel has got to be like a lost.
Well, there's not a lot of people that do it because there's not a lot of people that trust one person with their minerals.
Right.
Sometimes they're really fragile.
Right.
They're almost always expensive, and so, if you're doing it for a museum, you can't replace them.
Right.
They're one of a
And
kind.
so you've learned how to like hide these little the mounts, like hide it in the shadows of the stone, right? Because
Yeah.
it's largely you can't see it.
Well, that's the art of making mounts. Like you want to be able to display the item at its most beautiful and not have everybody looking through or around some kind of metal cage,
Yeah.
right?
No, it was pretty fascinating because I'll be honest, like before I met you, it's like I never would have thought that much about it. You know what I mean? Not like, oh, okay, great, these are old rocks, but you know what I mean? Oh, that's a pretty rock. But honestly, it was mind blowing, especially on that particular job we did in Dallas. It was just crazy, beautiful looking rocks you
Well,
were making
and
these
you-
mounts for.
Get to see what nature can do and how crystals and minerals form naturally. I mean, some people will look at them and think, oh, that was man-made, because there will be
Right.
all the most crazy structure to the crystalline form, and that's natural. It's not something that man has anything to do with.
Yeah, no. And again, you managed to take all these things and you sort of bring them into your creative process. And you've been doing this thing for a few years now. And you've been reading tarot for a long time.
Oh, yeah, long time.
And you have your own format that
Yeah.
you came up with.
Yeah, you helped me make the little booklet for that.
I helped you make the book. Yeah. Well, you were like, I have a new format. It's like, well, you need a book. So.
Well, you saw me in the living room, and I had a graph paper.
Oh, I remember that.
I was sketching out these things and drawing, and you're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I have this idea to like make a little booklet format for a new tarot spread. And he was like, oh, no.
I was like, we got to have a book. This needs to be in a book.
Yeah. So you got all my notes and put it together.
Yeah. Well,
really
you
cool.
have to. You got to do that. But you'll do this thing now. Somebody can come out here and get their tarot spread read, and then they can like leave with it turning into like it's going to be a piece of jewelry that you make.
Well, I mean, there's some people that think that crystals and gems and minerals have esoteric nature and benefit to us. Like an example of that would be when you use quartz in watches and clocks, they actually store energy.
Yeah.
So, not everybody thinks that, but
Well, that's irrefutable. I mean, it's what is it?
piezoelectricity.
Piezoelectricity. I mean, and we forget that sometimes that they do that. Rocks are kind of cool like that.
They are pretty cool.
It's just a fascinating little combination of skills you have, Sarah King.
Why, thank you.
And I was just happy that we really collaborated on this store. We did a great job.
It's a dream come true.
It's so much fun. It's so cool to have one place that we can bring people that shows them all the stuff that we do out here.
Well, you can't forget all the merch that you make.
Oh, I do. Well, I do like merch. You know, see, if you got a band, you got to have merch. And this was like a band.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always of the opinion, it doesn't matter what it is. If somebody comes out here and they have a good time, maybe they don't come in and buy a ring, or, maybe somebody doesn't want to buy a piece of jewelry or some jam, but everybody loves a t-shirt. I know I love a t-shirt. If you make a cool t-shirt, I'm like, dude, I'll wear your t-shirt.
Yeah, and we've got so much cool merch.
Well, you just get good at it over the years. It's literally, you're in a band, you got to make some t-shirts. So
I'm pretty good with 3D things like wax carving, but I'm not great with 2D, and that is your realm.
well, that's why we're tutti frutti. I'm 2D, you're 3D,
Together we make 40.
double D. This is the final, what we have deemed the last episode of our debut
Yeah.
season. We decided about 3 months ago we were going to start like a YouTube channel, a podcast, just talking about all these builds, and we did it. We went through this stuff. We dug out all the photos.
Right.
It was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh, we're just going to talk, and it's like, oh no.
No, I can see why it's a job for people.
It's a lot of work. It's all been fun.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of us that we just knocked it out. We're gonna have these edited, but at the same time, I realized, like, oh God, we got
a lot more to do.
I got a mess hall. I got to build a porch off the house. I need to build a whole area off the kitchen.
Man, I really need a whole bee workshop.
Oh, we have to build a 2-story
Yeah.
workshop building. So there might be several more seasons. I don't know. So we want to thank everybody who's watched and thank anybody who's going to come back and watch for future seasons, because you know it ain't going to stop.